Hello?
Yeah, so if you were to speak, it may just work. Since you were on the group, maybe that was a problem. Okay, carry on.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay, but we can
Yes,
hear you very clearly.
I can hear you
Again,
just more or
again,
less.
again, we can hear you, so carry on. We can hear you very clearly.
I can't really hear you very well, to be honest.
Okay, we'll try again. Okay, let me come there. Okay, wait. Can you hear me now?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think so.
Now we're good. So carry on because we can hear you very clearly now. Again.
Okay, should I go back a little bit if you haven't heard properly what I was saying before?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, let me start over. So this is again the ICOMOS SDGs focal point. I've been in this role since 2016, being taken over from Andrew Potts of US ICOMOS. I'll just try to talk a little bit about the SDGs in general, and then how heritage and ICOMOS figures in this and what activities we are busy with, and some ideas going forward for ICOMOS India in this new collaboration. Is that right?
Yeah,
okay. So I suppose everybody knows by now about the 2015 SDGs Agenda 2030, which is the inheritor of the previous global agenda, the MDGs. So the Millennium Development Goals became Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. This agenda is mainly focusing on people, planet, prosperity, as well as peace. It is really aiming to step up action, accelerate action, transformative action to address a lot of the planetary crises that we are facing today about the pace of change, urbanization, climate change, loss of biodiversity, urbanization, and the social economic problems it brings. And at this rate we're going, there will not be much to leave for our future generations. So it's a very urgent call to action, let's say. This includes culture and heritage, of course, in it. So it is very global, very high-level agenda. Global goals, 17 global goals that have been defined for various headings, from poverty to hunger, gender issues, sustainable consumption and production, climate change, ecosystems, etc. But it is all inclusive and holistic. It is for all countries, all people at every level, because we're all in this together. This is the main message. And how do we actually measure progress toward achieving the 2030 agenda? There are indicators that are defined for each of the targets, the 169 targets under the 17 global goals. And these are reviewed every year at the UN summit, which is the high-level political forum. And it is mainly based on the nation states, states parties. It is the United Nations after all, and they prepare voluntary national reviews, VNRs. We have just come back from the HPS this year, back in New York from July 8th to 16th. So we are now starting to participate at this very high-level global agenda, but that's one of the problems, actually. This is not supposed to be just a very high-level agenda, but localizing all the way down to grassroots level to individual level. So localizing is a big theme that is talked about, of course. And SDGs, while it is a challenge to actually translate this very technical jargon of the UN down to the grassroots level, it's also a very powerful advocacy tool. It is exciting and mobilizing people. How the problems of our human development, the quality of life, our everyday issues that we face every day. How can we use the SDGs to actually give new energy to action? How to accelerate action? So it has become quite ubiquitous. SDGs can be seen everywhere, and I'm sure in your work already you are seeing SDGs appear more and more as a concept. I suppose here our challenge is how to do this as alive and as action-oriented, as granular, as appropriate to our level of action and our everyday practice as much as possible. I should also mention that the Agenda 2030 is accompanied by other global agendas, which are implemented in the same way. These include the New Urban Agenda, adopted in 2016, Habitat 3, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Reduction, the COP, the Conference of Parties to the UN Climate Change Convention, and Finance for Development. So this is all a bundle of international agendas that we are following recently. And how does heritage figure in all of this? Well, in the 17 global goals and the 169 targets defined, it is important to have your own heading. And under SDG 11, the urban goal, we have 11.4, the target that defines our efforts to strengthen the protection of the world's cultural and natural heritage. Culture and nature are addressed in together as a whole, which is actually very much in line with our current thinking at the moment about heritage. But we are not only anchoring ourselves in 11.4, but going out into the whole spectrum of global, all issues. For example, climate change and heritage, tourism and heritage, ecosystems and heritage, agricultural systems, food security and cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, education, etc. There are so many entry points. So basically, what we are trying to do is change our thinking in a way that everything we do for heritage practice becomes something that serves the wider society and social economic issues that may not immediately seem heritage concerns, but they actually are, in one way or another, directly or indirectly. And actually, this change in thinking is so necessary, not only because it will strengthen and make more effective our heritage practice, but also make sustainable development practice more effective. Because the world needs culture and heritage to actually implement and achieve the sustainable development goals. So it is a really two-way street here. But it is difficult to actually make people see this. It is not so obvious, So one of our main advocacy challenges is both internally into our heritage community to get people to, make a habit to think of all of the heritage practice as something serving greater sustainable development issues, and for the non-heritage sectors, other actors, stakeholders in development or planning or decision-making places to actually consider cultural heritage as a factor that is a priority. That is something that needs investment, that needs due consideration, proactive consideration in decision-making for plan, project, development project. So the advocacy is external and internal. Here, we remind people that contrary to the traditional thinking that heritage is about monuments or archaeological sites, we talk about identity, memory, sense of place, how heritage has a crucial role in the urban development process, creating social cohesion, stimulating economic growth, reducing poverty, fostering socioeconomic regeneration, increasing density of urban spaces, which is more cost-effective, resource efficient, and better for the well-being of citizens, enhancing long-term tourism benefits, strengthening social fabric, and enhancing the competitive creativity attractiveness of regions. Just some of the main points to say when how he serves better sustainable development. This is really based on the evolving literature in ICOMOS. ICOMOS has been very actively engaged in the sustainable development agenda, especially since 2011, the Paris Declaration, Heritage as a Driver for Development. You will remember that declaration from the GA in 2011. But it actually even goes back further. When you look at 1964, the Venice Charter, it already talks about future generations. So implicitly, we have been thinking as heritage practitioners in a sustainable development-minded way. Perhaps this needs to be explained better and put into practice in more sectors of development. So let's see. There is also a way to approach cultural heritage in terms of sustainable development, both linking it into nature culture. We remember in the Delhi very successful and Delhi General Assembly, which I had the pleasure to participate and play an active role in. We had quite intensive sessions on the nature journey. That's a very strong point to work on. But secondly, there is the whole cultural sector, so cultural heritage as a part of the culture agenda. UNESCO has been working on this for years now, especially the Hangzhou Declaration of 2013, Culture and Sustainable Development, the seminal documents to guide us. And ICOMOS has been part of a coalition of other cultural NGOs before 2015, the Culture 2015 goal, which has now turned into a Culture 2030, which has actually advocated for culture as a fourth dimension, fourth pillar of sustainable development. There are, as you may know, three dimensions for the triple bottom line of sustainable development: social, economic, and environmental dimensions. And where does culture figure in this? Culture is argued to be everywhere. It embraces all dimensions. But it is not visibly seen as heading as much as we'd like. So something to work on, mainstreaming culture in all kinds of development discourse. And to actually implement the documents, the guidelines, the ideas of culture and heritage and sustainable development. ICOMOS has set up a sustainable development task force, which you may know Jyoti Sagrahar was the first chair along and Potts. Now Jyoti is UNESCO, and we had Sofia Avgeri-Polonias from ICOMOS Greece for a while as the SDG task force chair. Now we have Phillips from ICOMOS board, and I'm coordinating the task force, which has changed its name to the SDGs working group. And you can follow our activities and information on the ICOMOS website. There's a clear item, sustainable development. I invite everybody to explore the website where we post our activities. And if you are interested in becoming a member of the working group, you are very welcome to join. Now we are expanding the working members to have national committee representatives and scientific committee representatives, so that we have we're trying to channel the ICOMOS membership expertise and knowledge, resources into more policy messages. You see, one of the things that we discover that is missing, let's say, is how to translate the theory into action, not only in our heritage practices in our projects, but also in the policy messages that I'm talking about, the policy messages to the UN, to other decision-making bodies at national level, at regional level. And here, I think communication is crucial to have the right types of communication to be able to explain our ideas in a way that is translated and embraced by other stakeholders. We have produced the concept note for the for cultural heritage SDGs and the new urban agenda. Now we are working on developing this into an ICOMOS policy guidance on SDGs, which is more user-friendly. We also have an action plan for localizing the SDGs. You can download this from our webpage again on the ICOMOS website. Actually, in the action plan we adopted after our 2017 Istanbul meeting, there are a lot of action points that are offered to national committees and other organs of ICOMOS to take up. So maybe you might like to explore what action points are more relevant or interesting things you might want to follow up in this new collaboration. I can actually give you some examples from the action plan that you see. In the action plan, we have action area 1, general advocacy and organizing, localizing means of implementation, build visibility and awareness at national and local level, liaise and partner with national and local stakeholders for their role in implementation, create a portfolio of case studies, fundraising, and also work on indicators for monitoring implementation. One of the disadvantages of our sector seems things related to culture is that it is a little difficult to quantify. We have a lot of qualitative contributions, let's say, that we can talk about. And it is a challenge that UNESCO is working on right now, and we are also debating at times. The UN indicator for 11.4 is expenditure, public-private per capita expenditure on heritage. But is this a meaningful indicator? And what else can we propose that will truly show how heritage conservation makes a difference for better sustainable development outcomes and well-being of society? So this is something that you might want to take up. Let's see. We also are trying to keep coordinated with our other working groups in ICOMOS. There are several transversal working groups. One of them is the rights-based approaches that Bente and Peter have just been talking on behalf of. Actually, SDGs and human rights-based approaches are so overlapping. I think you may have already touched on this. And Gurmeet and I had a conversation last week where we made a point to emphasize it in this workshop. The SDGs, the UN Agenda 2030, is so embedded in human rights. About 90% of the targets described make some kind of reference or have relations with the human rights instruments, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And a lot of the development challenges, a lot of global goals, debates about inclusiveness, equity, women's rights, indigenous rights, these come back to the issue of human rights very often. And the way that sources, funding are distributed, the distribution of wealth, the poverty gap, it is not only a problem of not having enough money or resources, but how this is equitably distributed. And actually, culture and cultural heritage is on the wrong side of this equation, just as along with education or indigenous people's rights or women's rights. These topics are always somehow underrepresented and underinvested. So how can we actually mobilize more investment for culture, meaningful investment, and not only investment, but also a kind of change in the policy where heritage is factored in as a consideration. We see much more early in the process. We see this with World Heritage processes, as Peter mentioned. Outstanding universal value becomes quite a bigger challenge when people have already been designing and approving many decisions for development projects, for infrastructure, for investments to improve people's living conditions, sanitation, or water provision, electricity provision, energy. These considerations have taken place before the OUV is started to be considered. And as a latecomer, it becomes more difficult to actually uphold the OUV argument, which is actually a sustainable development argument. But somehow, the way that these processes are designed at all levels of practice, they have not really integrated heritage, as I was saying before. Other than that, let me see. We have also updated a little bit our action plan to define 7 priority action areas to make it easier to actually use our action plan. And among these, a key one is national liaisons and national relations. This is where ICOMOS India's new collaboration, I think, is very valuable. Actually, one other national committee which has been very active is Ireland. We had a very good meeting last year in Dublin, which was organized by Peter Cox from the Energy and Sustainability Committee and the ICOMOS Ireland group, who brought together different kinds of local stakeholders to discuss the SDGs. And it has really taken off in an amazing way since then, because ICOMOS Ireland is now part of Coalition 2030, which is an all-Ireland government plus NGOs platform, and goes to the high-level political forum together. Peter is on the national delegation, actually able to influence some of the thinking that government stakeholders in Ireland have wherever cultural heritage is most relevant, such as climate change. So perhaps one thing that I might suggest is to have Peter Cox from Ireland have a discussion to talk about their process. That might be useful. Coming back to the other working groups, I should mention that climate change, cultural heritage working group is very active these days. They have been launching a new report that they've prepared based on very rigorous scientific peer review. That was just launched in Baku at the committee session. You can find documents online in the ICOMOS webpage. We've actually just produced a special compilation literature for HLPF this summer. You can find that online. You can download it as well. Many other documents that I mentioned. And also, let me show you the visual that I mentioned before. Just a minute. So here we have created a little icon that we use everywhere. Just a minute. Can you see? Just trying to blur. Yes. So we have created a special icon which encompasses both people, intangible heritage, tangible cultural heritage, and natural heritage in our little icon to represent the 7.4 and all heritage use icon, the other icons of the SDGs, if you like. You can download all of this from the web page as well. And at the moment, what are our challenges going forward? Before I finish, I should just mention a couple of those. So basically, I think on the national level, just advancing the partnerships with different kinds of government and private business and academia, having an intersectoral kind of coordination mechanism. That's something that I think India can advance to have very interesting and effective results, I would say. And I'm sorry I'm not able to speak very comfortably today, so we could always continue the discussion and focus on things that are more interesting or relevant for the work of the workshop right now. But I've just tried to give a few of highlights of our work and our concerns. I think I should stop there. I hope it was audible. Are you still there?
Yes, yes, you were very much there. So can you put the video on? I think because it's easy to speak through like that.
Okay, here I am.
So, thank you very much. And your voice in the middle was kind of not very clear, but then there were patches which were clear. So, we have a mix kind of, I mean, I think. But one thing that came out very interestingly from your talk, Ege, is also the conversation that's been going on in ICOMOS, which is when Amund and all had requested for establishment of an ISC on rights-based. I remember in Florence, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So in Florence, there was this whole conversation between a lot of ISCs where the ISC on theory and philosophy were saying that rights are embedded in all our work. So why do we need a separate ISC or a working group? So finally, of course, the resolution was passed to set up the working group. But what occurs to me from what you're saying about SDGs, the second part of your talk, is that if we were to apply the lens of culture, lens of heritage on each of the SDG, it's like when you're looking at peace and security, look at it through the lens of heritage instead of the other way around. Or, and I think because the SDGs are, like you're saying, that a large percentage is embedded in rights. So if we were to apply another lens, which is the heritage lens or the cultural lens, and examine the SDG through that, we may just start getting some questions and answers in terms of what all it entails. Like for instance, right to lifelong learning, and how heritage plays a role, or heritage can be a tool, or culture can be a tool. Similarly, something like peace and security, or there could be several gender issues. There could be many
Yes.
which will pop up.
Water, energy, everything really.
Yeah, so this whole thing about rights-based approaches, to be able to develop, contextualize it in the Indian context, what is occurring to me is that if we were to look at the SDGs and apply the lens of heritage, we'll be able to get some of the answers on the RBA, contextualizing that in the Indian context. It gives us
Yes.
a bigger, you know.
I think you can also use the lenses together. I mean, when you're trying to connect heritage with each global goal, you can use the channel of rights. You can actually always look at it. Is this equitable? Is this inclusive? Is this taking care of the vulnerable groups? How can heritage help the vulnerable groups?
Yeah.
Or how is heritage actually perhaps blocking the way? Sometimes we might be negative, we might have to criticize ourselves and improve the way culture heritage is perceived and practiced. Because culture is an evolving thing, it's a living thing, and some of the practices may be antiquated and not anymore suited to sustainable development, not suited to gender equality or other issues of equity. So yes, we can. There is, I think, absolutely a very wide space to explore connection of heritage and each global goal through a human rights-based approach, an equity and inclusive approach. Yeah.
Thank
absolutely.
you so much. And there was a question in the context of periodic reporting. Do you want to, I don't know whether Ege can respond to this one, which, that how do you, the fact that every 6 years there is a cycle of periodic reporting on World Heritage Sites, whether that can be used as an opportunity to revisit, from the perspective of SDGs or from the rights. Is that something, any conversations on that?
I think that well, the periodic reporting questionnaire has been updated, and now it has a sustainable development question in it. It's a new thing, but I'm not sure I can remember now off the top of my head. I would have to look, but the question might be a little off. You know, um, the usual problem with SDGs practice, it seems, it's left at a broad level. So I don't know if people responding to the questionnaire actually understand what it means to interpret their site situation from sustainable development goals perspective. Maybe we have to develop some support models or toolkits to actually go through the 17, ask ourselves the right questions, and see how the cultural heritage site management is ticking off the boxes of the SDGs. Or something very interesting came up. We're making an exercise. We have an intern from US ICOMOS right now for the working group. And together we are compiling the ICOMOS annual reports, all of the committee's annual reports that they submit every year. And we also added a SDGs question in the report template. And we see how people have answered the question on SDGs. It's amazing how many activities that the committees have been undertaking are actually sustainable development oriented. And it has not been ticked off. They haven't seen what they're doing themselves, committee representatives, as contributing to sustainable development. We don't even know ourselves how much potential we have and how much to contribute we have. I think it's a matter of learning to interpret it in a different way. Not only in the periodic reporting, there is a new toolkit from UNESCO of measuring sustainable tourism, the World Heritage Tourism and Visitor Management Assessment Toolkit, I believe. Mr. Brian from UNESCO has been advocating and presenting this one. There's an SDGs, quite a detailed SDGs measurement section there as well. That might be something you want to look at. So yes, in the World Heritage processes, the SDGs are now appearing more and more, but I don't know if we are really fully the potential of how to use SDGs. I think we need to experiment and exchange notes and compare results. This is all quite new. It's only 3-4 years, so we are figuring it out as we go along.
Okay. Any questions? So that should be useful for you, these SDG in tourism, sustainable tourism or something like that she's talking about. But which website are you talking about? Is it the ICOMOS website or is it a UNESCO website where all this material you've put?
Yes, everything I mentioned should be on the website, and if there is something missing, you can always email me. I'll be happy to. It's quite exciting, so congratulations on your new initiative, by the way.
Okay. Any other questions from the group here? So this is very useful. Again, thank you so much for finding the time. You probably
my pleasure. Thank you very much. All right. Have a nice rest of the day.
Yeah, and thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Okay, bye-bye. But I'm better in New York this time. Unfortunately, what she was saying was not very audible unless you're already familiar with what she's saying. That was so sadly. I hope it made, Okay. So, we can continue with the rest of the presentations, if that's all right. It's 2:20. Okay. Yeah, we have presentation by Radhika on Champaner, Pavagar. archaeological park. So I guess this is the work on the World Heritage nomination. Is that the whole process? Is that what was the content? Would you just give a...
So, should I have a
You have a,
presentation?
you've already loaded it there, no?
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've got 3 presentations, and I hope I'm not till, no, actually 4 of them. Um, yeah, but then it's still a presentation. So, Bhuvna is going to not speak on the potters in Sonipat. She's going to be talking about the Kathputli column. Is that the... Yeah, so she'll be talking about intangible heritage. So what we'll do is we'll have a presentation, Radhika, yours, and then Bhuvna's, and Dr. Sonali Ghosh is right here. The next one is by her. Welcome. And Sonali, I had taken the liberty of, okay, I'll make the introductions later, of giving a title to your presentation, but is that something you want to change, or is it, are we going with that? I mean, I had written World Heritage Sites, Rights and Management of Natural Heritage Sites in India. On that, okay, fine. So we've got 3 here, between a cultural heritage site and intangible heritage site, intangible heritage aspects, and Sonali's on, Dr. Ghosh is on natural heritage sites. And you said coffee is at 3 o'clock, you said? 3:30. So we have 20 minutes for...
Good morning again. So, so as you heard from Komal, and we have been trying to dabble with Champaner Pavagadh, a World Heritage Site again, cultural, as a case for the RB approach, to use the RB approach for management of the site. And there are many ICOMOS members who are not here right now, but have worked on the site extensively with the people in the site. And to name a few, there is Nalini Thakur, and there is Rohit Jigyasu. There's also some other people, ICOMOS members, like Gamini Vijaysurya, who have been to the site many times, and is from Sri Lanka. And there are also many others who are probably not ICOMOS members, but these are few we can approach for. So they have all been a part of this process, which I'm going to just share with you briefly. So, Champaner Pavagadh is a World Heritage Site under 4 cultural criteria. Criteria 3 is to bear a unique testimony to a cultural tradition or to a civilization which is living or which has disappeared. Criteria 4, which is building, architecture, design, landscape, illustrates significance, stage and human history. This is criteria 4. And 5, which refers to cultural landscape, which also has to do something with, I mean, it should have also entail the natural aspect of landscape. And criteria 6, to be directly or tangibly associated with events or living traditions, with ideas or with beliefs, with artistic works of outstanding universal value. So this is what is under the 4 cultural criteria that this site has been inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2004. So it's a serial nomination because it is spread over a very vast area. It's almost 13 square kilometers is the core area, and another 29 square kilometers is the buffer area. And the main reason being that it has many fragments of and layers of history, because it's a site which is layered since the Chalcolithic period, and it has many layers of history, and many remains, and also archaeologically extensively um, documented research archaeological site for settlement. And so even today, when you walk around on this site, you will find many remains, antiquities lying just like that, and which is of course a big security hazard. Um, there is also, because of so many layers of history and settlements that have lived there, um, there's also a very there is religious significance, and that is a living, it is one of the Shakti Peeths. So they say that it is the right toe of Kalika Mata. So it is one of the one of the 53 Shakti Peeths, and hence there is a temple right on the top of this mountain, or not mountain but hillock, and people walk up. They come from all parts of the country to visit this shrine, and it is also an Islamic site. So there is on top of this temple there is a peer, there is an Islamic site, in the sense people go there to put the chadar and all that. So it's also a very religious place. And interestingly, it has settlements in 3-4 areas within these 13 to in the buffer as well as in the core. And so the settlement obviously is very sporadic, because when there is pilgrimage, so when you see in this photograph, the the settlement is quite sporadic. So they're there, then they're not there. Then when there is a lot of pilgrimage, that time they come and then they go away. And then there is 2 areas where there is permanent settlement, where where they have regular people living there since years and things like that. But twice over, this site in past history has been abandoned, and I think that is one of the reasons why there are many layers of history which is just sort of there, buried. But in 2004, when it got inscribed on the list of UNESCO, there was a need for management plan. And I think in 2003, this whole thing of having management plans was a big thing, and there was a need that, no, it's a site which requires management plan. So this is the decision in the 28th session, and they had requested for a management plan. But there were not many people in India that time who knew how to make the management plans, and what it really entails and how we should go about it. So it took quite a few years, and when I joined the ASI in 2010, that time it was still a requirement, and that is when I stepped. I mean, it was in process, but it still needed somebody. So I had actually undergone training with this site in mind at VTRAP to prepare the management plan. And then we had partners, so the Archaeological Survey of India, there's Heritage Trust, so jointly prepared by them. And there was already an act which is called the authority, which is Champaner Pavagadh Archaeological Park World Heritage Management Authority, which was led by also again Nalini Thakur and her students, professor. And this act was formed, and so when we started preparing the management plan, it was in 2010, and we started with the vision of what the management plan should be. And so again, there was even that time talks of how to enable visitors, the pilgrims, the local people to enjoy, then improving the quality of life in the region. All these very nice ideas, right? Like that is a vision, but what happens? How do we get there? The statements of integrity and authenticity I have just put so that, because one needs to understand that the statement of integrity means that it is holistic in nature, like it had to become a serial so that all these parts can be under one, so the integrity is complete. And authenticity, that it has still that whole, the protection and conservation. A lot of sites, there are 114 sites which have been documented on this site. Sites in the sense that buildings, archaeological For some are just foundations, some are buildings, some are step wells. So there's many typologies in terms of architecture. And of course, there's a whole layer of archaeology, which is also documented with the MS University, which the MS University had done. So there is, this is how we then started panning out that, okay, what should be the scope of work of this management plan? What kind of processes, and I put this slide just to show that we did always say that it is interdisciplinary, participatory, but whenever we would go to discuss anything, they would be like, oh, we don't want you guys, we don't want anything, you know, and we said, but you know, we have to look at this. And then I remember this one time when I was in Sri Lanka, and I think that's the first time I met Gurmeet there. We all were complaining about how the government doesn't listen, the government doesn't do that. And then Richard got up and said that who makes the government? Like, you guys make the government. So it's a totally people's approach, you know. If the government is saying so, it's the people who want it. So that was one learning thing. And so then I realized when we were working with the government, when I was working with the government, I realized that it is a need to write this, but it is also there is actually a need to go to the people, even if it is the government. So there is some sort of a dialogue with the locals and what they need for even to be comfortable in that World Heritage Site. So there were many issues, and we thought we would take it from general to specific. Built heritage. Now this site has a particular problem. It's almost 78% is under the forest. It is forest land. So out of the 13 square kilometers, 78% is forest protected land. So there is a lot of archaeology within the forest land, which is also an issue, because then you can't manage it, you can't cut anything, you can't, the overgrowth just sort of, so there were many issues, and religious issues which we didn't even, we haven't even taken it into consideration, because when they have fights amongst Hindu and Muslims, we don't, like, those are things we have not put in the management plan, but those are issues of rights which we need to address. So parallelly, along with, if we get into the periodic reporting, or if there is a research on, or something to do about this issue that can be resolved, or how it can be resolved, then this is a gap here. This was a kind of framework for management of the property, where the authority was central core and to what all can happen in the site. And this authority, which was bound by this act, had, okay, I'll go to that later, but maybe I should go to that first. So this authority was so inclusive that it tried to put in all these people in place. Whoever had anything to do with site was on this. And Chief Secretary of Gujarat, who never has the time for a meeting, was made the head of this chairperson. But anyways, we had quite a few, 4 or 5 good meetings before we did get the management plan approved. So this was the only, like, how do you put, just by making a law which has everybody on that plan, that doesn't work either, is what I have realized after 5 years of looking at this plan just sitting there. But it has everybody, nobody has been missed. And then there is a technical advisory committee which has all these members who take the technical decisions. They are also, all the local officers are got in forest, in MS University, the academia, everybody who is to do anything to do with the site have been included in this. I'll just go back to this. Interestingly, that same year when we started preparing this plan, it was 2010-11 when there was again this whole cycle of periodic reporting was just starting. So we did this periodic reporting, and as I said, that we never knew what will be the outcome of this, and this was the, I don't know how to get closer to this, but so we did this sort of a, we had to just tick in these boxes that, okay, this is restricted, there were options, and we had to just pinpoint of what all areas are actually answering those questions. And when you realistically did answer those questions, then how do I move? This is what came up. after answering all those many questions of management and issues. And so the management issues were this: what criteria does it affect? Like the management of solid waste causing pollution is a minor impact, but it impacts the criterias 5 and 6. So who is the responsible agency and who has to take action? This was a sort of a automatically generated answer that we got. So which was very handy for that management plan that we were trying to make. And then we thought that, okay, then this can go into the cycle of the management plan, which can be dynamic. So every time you do the periodic reporting cycle, you'll have this, and then you'll know exactly what the issues are. And then the departments will accordingly take, but it is not as easy. Nothing has happened yet. So obviously it's all on paper. And this was another process of what the objectives of this management plan were. I won't go into details of this, but of course to do with values, to do with various aspects of infrastructure. Again, you see participatory approach to ensure local community participation through prevalent systems available. I don't know what we mean by that, but that's a long-term plan, because we never sort of came to a solution. What do we exactly, how do we participate with, and who all should be participating? Again, partnership, still an issue. Engagement, coordination, this I have already told you. And these were like the long-term plans, the short-term plans, and who all will do what kind of work. So this was the whole management. So the activity, by whom and by when. So this is how it was divided, and this was the last part of so when everybody knew which organization or which body had to do what work, that was a sort of a big relief to the whole system of management, that okay, you have to do this. And so everybody had their own duties that they had to perform. And we did take in, sorry. No. I'll just go back. So we did take in those areas where, which the periodic reporting cycle had actually, told us that, okay, you need this. And then that sort of went back and forth with what the periodic reporting follow-up requirement was. So this was fell in place. But on site, because the people, we don't know how to participate with people and how to get that participatory approach in place, obviously this does need a lot of more work than just getting. But this was approved by the World Heritage Committee, one of the few from India that got approved, accepted and appreciated. In fact, got a special mention in the resource manual of heritage management manual that has been made. And monitoring and review, this clearly said that it would follow the periodic reporting monitoring system. That's about it, about the management. I don't know how helpful this is, but if there are any questions relevant to...
Thank you very much. No, this is very, very useful. I mean, it was very interesting to see that particular table of yours where you've identified the responsibilities and names of the agencies. But I think that pink one, this one, what would be, for our kind of, the work that we want to set out to do on rights, it's about taking this further to the next. Because like what Sudarshan was saying in the morning, that a lot of these means are what, that wonderfully way, the wonderful way in which you explained it, that a lot of these would mean that you've got to give resources into operationalizing some of these ideas, and so it's not a state's obligation to do it all, it's a wish list. So unfortunately our management plans stop at wish lists. That's why they stay the way they stay and are not found on the ground. Because like you say, pilgrim visitor facilities for entire property, this authority, drinking water, Gram Panchayat has to give it, it's their responsibility. But is it part of the program? Where do they get resources? Do they get it every year? Do they get it once in 10 years? Or are their priorities something else? So who is it impacting? Do they have to first look at the Basti water, or should they be looking at Pilgrim water? So, you know, I mean, there is, you got to, it's like our democracy, no? You go and put your vote in and say, this is India is a democratic country, but who's operationalizing democracy? So it doesn't, it has to go further down. So I would say this is like a tip of the iceberg for rights work. That's one, no? This is outside the government systems. But I like the idea when they say that if we can identify, I mean, we'll come to it tomorrow, that who's the duty bearers are we talking about? Because we can't look at the entire spectrum of duty bearers. So who do we want to look at?
So in one of the
And
participation
who are we
meetings,
preparing the training manual for? And narrow it down to begin with. I mean, those are the thoughts that are coming to me because we
Yeah.
can't, be all encompassing. But we have to decide judiciously where we want to spend our time.
so no, so this is what I wanted to say, that when the Heritage Trust started having, after this plan was passed, when they started having meetings with the Gram Panchayat and all, they were just told to go away. They said, you just stay out of our way. You are not required and you will not enter this. So that 13 square kilometers now the Heritage Trust is not allowed to get into. And they are part of this Chief Secretary's committee, which is an act.
No, this is the Heritage Trust or the authority? Because you got
The
to say-
Heritage Trust. The authority is headed by the Chief Secretary.
So the authority
Is not
how is
operationalizing
that-
as yet.
So then that's what. Unless the Heritage Trust was mandated by the authority as the entity to do it.
Yes.
So that's an NGO work.
Yes.
The actual government work is sitting
Just
as a piece of paper.
Huh. Very beautiful minutes that keep
Yeah.
get written every yearly or annually or whatever. Anyways, this is the case of Champaner. Seems
But one
all resolved,
question,
but
Radhika and Komal, in terms of all the World Heritage sites that we have, about 37 or whatever, how many of them are cultural sites? Or
there
how
are
many are
there were
natural sites?
26 when I.
Should be cultural.
Yeah.
And all 29 have management plans?
Yeah, it is a part of the nomination dossier
Well, lots of them got nominated before the management
for
plans.
post 2005. So
On the management plan.
So when we thought that, okay, these will require management plans and the periodic reporting will have the management plans. So I think what the understanding between the state party and the World Heritage Committee prior to 2002, 2003 was that because it was protected by the government body, which is a state party, they had already an existing management system, which obviously works. So that is what was considered as a management plan in
But
today's
that's no plan.
context. But that's no plan, of course. But so that is what the plan, the system is there,
What
and
is
we
the
need to
system?
engage.
The essay with his conservation assistant.
Whatever it is.
We need to talk about what is the
Chapter
staffing
5 and 6 of the
Of the nomination file.
nomination
Yeah,
dossier.
so we need to talk about the staffing levels, what is the organization structure, and so
Come
basically,
closer.
so it talks about the structure of the organization. It talks about the top down, the DG level, the circle level, and everything, and it talks about the staffing. So I think, like you said, that 2003 was where you had site management plans being prepared. So that was when that used to go as an annexure. So, but as a body in the text, we have the staffing levels to be mentioned, and what is the monitoring status and what the management or the institution who is governing it is planning to protect it. I think so that forms the major work of the nomination itself. But I think in the last few years, all the annexures have been going as site management plans.
Which annexure?
For the nomination, so that has been a mandatory thing with the World Heritage.
A separate management
Yes,
plan.
a separate management plan for the management of site apart from the nomination dossier.
So,
See, the thing is, the nomination dossier has two parts. One is the nomination of
Yeah.
itself, one is the management
Annexures.
All the nomination laws require these.
Yes.
Yes.
But till 2003, all the World Heritage sites did not have that.
Yes.
Hmm.
There, when you are doing periodic reporting, you're referring to the ASI management
The
System.
management systems. Yes.
as
Except
your
for
management.
Ellora and
Yes.
Ajanta, I think now we have some
And
document.
yeah, and then you just talk about all the budgets available.
Yeah, that's what.
So that's
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
That's a question.
Maybe conservation
Yes.
priorities.
Yes.
What happens to the buffer zones?
So that also forms a part of the protection management, the chapter 5.
But
So-
that's post 2003. Why I'm asking this is because
Uh-huh.
as of recently, there is these iconic sites of India, which
Yes.
out of 13 of World Heritage
Yes.
sites. And the Taj Mahal and Qutub Minar and all these are in that list. And all this beautification is going to happen in the buffer.
Right.
And in the absence of, and ASI technically has no jurisdiction in the buffer.
Correct.
Except with the 100 and the 300.
वो भी नहीं है because it's
Before
NMA.
Environment Authority,
Yeah,
House
NMA.
Authority,
Yeah.
Hmm.
But that is where, so as far as I know, so like for example, I was involved in the site management plan of Taj Mahal. So it has a 500-meter
So you
buffer.
have a site management
Yes.
plan for Taj Mahal
Yes,
now?
which is
Now I
mandated
think.
by the Supreme Court. Which will
So
be.
it's in under preparation or it's been
It's
named?
been submitted. Yeah.
Like
So I
the Red
think,
Fort.
Yeah. And the Red Fort one, yeah. So I think that's where the chapter 5 also talks about what is the plan for managing the buffer and how the institution will take part in it. And then we have to identify all the players, the stakeholders, like this
Yeah.
table that you were showing. So here you mentioned forest department as well.
Every
I
organization.
was flagging this issue for our colleagues here from Virginia Global University. It's primarily because ICOMOS is mandated to look at World Heritage. So the others, the World Heritage Convention talks about the state obligation of the state to look after all types of heritage. But ICOMOS is an advisory body to UNESCO on World Heritage matters. So the window of this RPA work for us to look at World Heritage as current, past, whatever, can be one area of work, and it need not be the only, but that's something which.
Like, we had taken the case study of Bodh Gaya, where it's not a protected site. So what's the stakeholder? So that becomes another case of
So it's
rights
not a
based.
protected monument?
No, it's not. It's not.
Mahabodhi Temple is
Mahabodhi Temple is a World Heritage Site. It is BTMC is an authority,
Right.
and that authority in 1953 had mandated ASI to protect the site. So all conservation works is still done by ASI, but
But
is
it's not
not
notified.
it's not under the ownership of ASI.